Good evening, everyone. It is Susannah Birch here with you tonight, and we are covering the topic of Twitter, which is one of my favorite social media platforms. However, we will get to that shortly. So I'm just going to do a little intro about myself first. So welcome to everyone who has joined us here tonight live on the webinar. And for those who are watching on later, hello to you as well. Hope you're all keeping warm this nice chilly winter. Anyway, a little bit about me for those who don't know who I am. I love Twitter. Well, that's a given, isn't it? And I've been working in digital marketing in various ways since around 2009. Now, on Twitter, I have over 50,000 of my own personal Twitter followers, and I also run accounts across other niches and topics that I've had varying amounts of success with. And honestly, it's something I just love to try new things on Twitter, and I love building brands, and I love building ways of having conversations on Twitter. Now, I'm a digital generalist. What does that mean? It means that, well, I'm not really a specialist in anything. I love some things like Twitter, and I love SEO and blogging, but I'm a great all-rounder. So I know a lot about a wide array of social media platforms, which is why I'm going to tell you that not everyone should be on Twitter. Yes, it is my favorite platform, but it is definitely a niche platform, and it is not designed for everyone to be on it. However, we will discuss that in more depth. Now, I've worked across a wide range of industries, which is why I can say this about Twitter, because I've worked in medtech, construction, I've worked in hospitality, I've worked with clients across a wide variety of areas, and I can tell you not all of them are suitable for Twitter, but many of them surprisingly are. And also, I did do the studying thing where I studied journalism, and later I studied a Master of Marketing. However, in my experience, when it comes to digital, the world changes so fast and you need to experiment so much that most of what you're going to learn when it comes to digital marketing is about trying things yourself, and you're not always going to get it right. That said, it's really fun trying. Don't be scared of doing it, and you'll be amazed what you can learn in the meantime, because only a tiny percentage of people on the internet are creators of content. The rest of us just consume the content, whether it's photos or videos or humor or writing. We're consuming daily, but there's only a few people who are brave enough to get out there and create, and you are one of them, so congratulations. So, number one question, those who aren't really sure how the platform works, what is Twitter? That is the big question, isn't it? So, in case you're wondering, it isn't a bird watching site. Originally, it was crafted a little around the whole idea of the cute little tweeting birds, and it is a little like that because of the limitations we have in character count. You're chirping or tweeting really short, sharp bursts of information, which is one thing I love about it, but a lot of people find really limiting. So a little bit about Twitter. It's limited to 280 characters, which honestly is huge when you were originally limited to 140. They did increase it a few years ago, and it's given us a little bit more room to have our thoughts all coherently in one tweet. Once upon a time, you could probably tweet around one sentence and then you were basically stopped from adding more text. But 280 characters, you can often get to sometimes 2.5 sentences in there, which gives you a little more space to craft a message in a tweet. Now, it is really an online news and social networking site. Sites like Facebook, well, you probably experienced this yourself. You see a post that really interests you and you find out the date is already passed or the information is 2 or 3 days old. Now, the problem with this is that algorithms decide what's relevant to you when. Twitter does, of course, use algorithms, but it's generally a lot faster moving, and you have the option to see tweets in chronological order instead of what the algorithm thinks is most important to you. What that means is that it's really good for keeping up with news events or anything happening chronologically. So this, for instance, can even be things like conferences. If you're attending a 2 or 3 day conference, Twitter is great for that because it's a way of tying together all those messages around one key event, and you can see them in chronological order for the most part, and you can really keep up to date with what's happening. And when it comes to news in general, it's great. So during the bushfires, during the floods, Twitter was an amazing source of information. The reason for this is because anyone anywhere could tweet and use keywords or hashtags related to the events. And what that means, of course, is that everyone could see a coherent picture based on all these people adding their own thoughts and opinions instead of having to consume data just off news pages like you would on some other platforms. So microblogging and citizen journalism are another thing on there. So as I mentioned, it's a big thing for news. And when it comes to news, of course, people generally consume it from news sites. However, when it comes to Twitter, anyone can be a news source. So for instance, back during the floods and the fires, what happened was there were everyday people like you and I in the middle of the fires actually able to tweet things. And what that meant for them was that essentially they were in the middle of what was happening and people in the media weren't able to reach those locations. So it's important that people on the ground were able to actually add their opinions, thoughts, and real news to Twitter and have a way for all that information to come together outside just the media. Now, of course, it is popular among celebrities. There's a lot of celebrities who get on there and actually reply to their fans, engage with them. Really popular option is James Blunt. A lot of people like to hate on James Blunt and say he's a really bad musician, and he likes to agree with them while insulting them. So he's actually got to the point where he's grown a following of people who just try and get his attention by insulting him, and he insults them back. It's actually very entertaining, trust me. But it's also popular among everyday people who want to consume the news, keep up with the latest interesting information, and really engage in a way that isn't the traditional friends and family that Facebook really is because of privacy walls. So why is it popular? Well, there's a few reasons. Here's just some of them. Now, it's scan-friendly content because you're limited to 280 characters. What that means is you're not reading giant walls of text. You're reading short, sharp bursts of information. So when you log into your Twitter, depending who you're following, if they're all around a particular topic, what that means is that often people can scan through and in 5 minutes get an overview of all the things happening in their niche just by reading a few quick tweets, which is great because then you don't need to spend all day trying to figure out what's going on. Number two is lack of privacy walls. Over on Facebook, you've got a lot of privacy walls. So that comes down to things like friends. You've got to be friends with someone to see some of their posts. Or Facebook groups. There's privacy walls around Facebook groups, so you can only see what's in them if the admin allows you to become a member. However, on Twitter, you can lock down your account profile, but generally speaking, most people don't because it's a very, very public platform where people really want to engage with new and interesting thoughts, and privacy walls really inhibit that. Now, then the last one, of course, but not the only one, is quick connections. You can follow someone and they don't have to follow you back. On Facebook, you have to connect with them and request them and they have to accept. Twitter is very much based around the idea that you can follow someone just like Instagram to some degree and engage with them and talk to them without having to go out of your way to really build that early connection before you become close friends. So you can actually reply to them and have conversations without having to go out your way to press fancy buttons and do certain things. Just get in there and start a conversation with someone. That's the main thing on Twitter that we love. So conversation, I've said that a few times now, and conversation is a big key. Now, what do I mean by conversation? Well, the great thing about Twitter is that unlike Facebook, where there's comments and people have to read the comments attached to the main post, every single tweet can stand on its own and be shared on its own, which is something I love. And that means if you're replying to something and there's lots of people noticing, your tweet can get just as much engagement and views and really grow your account as the original tweet if you've got something to say on the topic. And It's also really fun to see the conversations people have. For instance, here's one with Old Spice, which is a really popular, well, they're brilliant at Twitter. They do a great job. And they've made a tweet about why is it that fire sauce isn't made with any real fire? Seems like false advertising. And Taco Bell said, is your deodorant made with really old spices? And look, you've got someone who's come along and replied to Taco Bell with, is your bell really made of tacos? Now, as you can see just down the bottom here, it says 15 retweets. So even though Mr. Blue, as he's known here, isn't someone who's well known or anything like that, because he made a funny tweet, people are sharing just that tweet to their own timelines, and you don't actually need to be part of the entire original conversation just to see that small piece made that was really funny that someone mentioned in the conversation thread. So the great thing about conversations, the more you've got to say towards other people, the more it can really grow your brand and your reach. So when it comes to conversations, you have to be retweetable. So if you're just giving a yes, no response to something, well, people are going to retweet that because it's not something that makes sense by itself, because you need the original tweet and conversation to make sense of it. However, if you think about crafting your tweet in such a way that includes either the original question or even if it includes enough information to identify what it's trying to say, that can be a great way for you to grow reach just by conversing with other people on Twitter. Now, here's an example. If I replied to a tweet saying something like, yes, I agree about trees being important, well, that doesn't really say much. And it also doesn't stand on its own without whatever the original tweet was. However, if you recraft that, so you've got your own reasoning in there, you're adding to the conversation, yes, I agree trees are important for long-term health and sustainability in cities because, and add your own reason, you're adding to the conversation, and that is something that can stand on its own, and that's something where people interested in the topic of trees could come along and just retweet your opinion. So every time you reply to a conversation, say to yourself, when I tweet this, could this stand alone without anything else surrounding it? Can this be a piece of information that people are interested on its own without having to be part of someone else's conversation? And once you learn to craft those retweetable tweets that stand alone, you can start conversing with brands and other people in your niche and having conversations, and you will become retweetable and people will share your opinions based on those conversations and relationships that you've built. So what about trends? As I said earlier, news is a huge part of Twitter and trends are part of that. So you can see on Twitter in this screenshot that you've got all different types of trending topics that you can view, whatever's going at that time. So here's a screenshot I took on International Women's Day. You'll see that was trending at the time. Break the bias, Sydney Storm, which is a sports related one. And you've also got other options to look at trending topics such as in COVID, news, sports, entertainment, and your own personalized trend feed, which is for you based on people you follow and topics you engage with and tweet about. So what this means is that you see something interesting relevant to you. You can join the conversation and you can see all the interesting tweets around that trending topic. Now, the cool part about trending topics is they don't just need to be hashtags. A lot of people think Twitter's all about hashtags, and although it was the place where hashtags really became a thing, Twitter is so much more than that. You can actually search on Twitter by any array of keywords and find tweets relating to those keywords. So sometimes people will tweet something enough that just the keywords themselves become a trending topic. And this is something, for example, say there was a famous person that was trending or a comedy sketch, then the name of the comedy sketch or the famous person would be a trending topic, even if there are no hashtags involved. And it's well worth getting involved in trending topics because honestly, it comes down to the fact that you're having conversations. And if you're talking about the latest trends, as long as they relate to your niche or area of business, you're getting involved in very active conversations, and people want to hear the latest thoughts and opinions on them. So if something is trending that is relevant to you and you have an opinion, an informed opinion on, then it's well worth adding to that conversation and getting engaged. So as I was saying, hashtags are important, but you can also search by them. So at the top left here, you can see that I've typed in 2 separate hashtags, and you can actually press enter on those and find every single tweet that mentions both hashtags. You can also type in a hashtag, and then you can type in a word and find all tweets that mention that combination. So just like on Google, you can type in a combination of keywords and find things around those topics. So for instance, when I'm looking for media requests around particular topics, I might type in hashtag journo request, which stands for journalist request. And from there, I might add in another word like sustainability or marketing. And then I can find anyone who made a journo request around sustainability or marketing in one tweet. So it really is great that Twitter has such a great search system. I know over on Facebook, they're very limited in how many posts they show, and Instagram can be quite tricky to navigate as well. So the great thing about Twitter is that they really do have a great search functionality, and you can really narrow things down and find specific tweets around whatever topic you're looking for. So it's well worth utilizing that. Now, as you can see here at the bottom left, when you start actually typing in a hashtag, it will alert you if there is a trending hashtag and you start typing it, you'll say, hey, this is trending. This might even be how many different tweets have happened in the last hour. Now, not all trends are worth hopping on, of course. Some are a bit silly, or some you'll get drowned out by all the thousands of other people adding their opinion. And that's where it's worthwhile jumping on someone else's conversation instead of starting your own. Go ahead, find someone saying something interesting and add your own 2 cents, because that's a great way to build relationships. Now, a little note on controversy. There's no privacy walls on Twitter. And what that means is anyone can have an opinion on what you've got to say. So do take care that what you're saying isn't just a flyaway comment. Or if you are the kind of person who is a bit of a troll sometimes on the internet, make sure you've got thick skin, because anyone on Twitter can find your content and add their opinion, and it may not can coincide with yours. So it's well worth being aware and a little bit wary about controversy on Twitter. There are some parts of the platform which can get a little hostile depending on what your opinions are around. So another thing to keep in mind is that it's impossible to delete someone else's tweets. You can delete your own tweet, but when you try and delete someone else's tweet, there's no option. You can only block them. So there's no way to get rid of a conversation happening on your Twitter thread. So it can be a bit problematic if you're in a controversial space, because moderation can, cause issues. So the big question, who is using Twitter? Now, a lot of people think it's just about politics, and that honestly is a part of it, especially before a big election. There's a lot of opinions and everyone's sharing them. However, there are so many other niche communities, and these aren't all of them, but these are a few that I've interacted with on some of my accounts. So startups are a big one. Startup community is big on Twitter, and they're all supporting each other, looking for new ways to collaborate, looking for investors, and so on. A lot of tech happening on Twitter. Agriculture is a big one. So, for instance, Australian farmers, many of them utilize Twitter to keep up with the latest tech, to connect with other farmers and so on. So if you're in the ag sector, I definitely recommend utilizing Twitter. Of course, journalists are a huge group on there. They're the highest verified group on Twitter, simply because there are no privacy walls and there's continually trending news. Two things that make it very easy for journalists to find breaking stories, grab them, jump on them, and turn them into a media story. So journalists love Twitter for that reason. Politics, of course, and I'd be wary getting into the political side of Twitter. It can get a little heated. History is a big area. There are a lot of different Twitter accounts who share different parts of history. There are a lot of historians on Twitter, and they're all sharing their various parts of their knowledge base, or even photos, things like that, and engaging with people and providing education and so on. Writing. If you're an author, well, Twitter is a great place to be. Hashtag writers community is a big one, and things like hashtag editing and writing. There are many different hashtags around the writing community, and most of them are very supportive of each other's books, and they'll retweet you and engage and follow. And if you're an author, it's a very friendly, welcoming community. Now, completely different community is the fan accounts. So, for instance, say there's a celebrity such as the Kardashians or Taylor Swift or Selena Gomez. There are a lot of people who have accounts just devoted to being fans of these celebrities, and they can get quite defensive of their favorite celebrities. So be careful that you don't engage too heavily with them if you're going to be negative about a certain celebrity. However, those fan accounts actually aren't just all fun and games. Many of them are actually really good at getting rid of negative tweets, basically flooding hashtags on negative topics with things like innocuous videos or memes about their favorite celebrities. So they will band together and they will do good things, but that's a whole other topic, trust me. Now, trending news, of course. People love getting the news off Twitter, and it's such a good place to get it in small, bite-sized chunks. So anyone related to the news is going to be on Twitter in some form. Mental health is another big one. So there's an amazing mental health community on Twitter, and they all engage with each other. Many of them have podcasts or blogs, and they're always looking to help each other in that community. Another one is sustainability. So sustainability covers things such as renewables, lowering your carbon footprint, creating things that are greener, and so on. So sustainability is a huge area, and there's so many different people talking in that space. So if you're anywhere in sustainability, it's worth jumping on Twitter. So what about the people themselves, though? Who are the people using Twitter? So 63.7% are male, so a larger male demographic. 80% are affluent millennials, and 77% earn over $75,000. So what does this mean for you? Well, usually they're better educated, or they think they are. They're often better researched, and they really have strong opinions on their topic. So while some social media, you might find people don't have strong opinions either way, or they are usually interested in, having an educated or informed or researched opinion on something. When it comes to Twitter, people really know what they're talking about if it's their niche, and you can get into some really interesting conversations around that. But of course, because there is this level of people who are much more passionate about their topic, you can stick your foot in the hot water and get in a bit of trouble. So make sure if you're tweeting about something, you do know your topic and you are informed, because otherwise you can get a few people jumping on you, pointing out your errors. Been there, done that. Now, the big one, if you're working as a brand, is 93% of people are open to brands getting involved if done in the right way. So what does that mean? If you're tweeting on Twitter, people are happy to engage with you. As long as you're not doing it in a really salesy, pushy way or a rude way, hey, there's a good chance it's going to work for you. So how do you craft a great tweet? So there are a few things that can help you craft a great tweet. Informed or well thought out opinions. Don't just throw bits of random thoughts out there. Think about it, have your own opinion, have resources, have your own informed research-based opinion. Anecdotal is fine as well, as long as you can say, this is my experience, this is why I have this opinion. People on Twitter really love to hear background evidence for why you have an opinion and love engaging in discussions around it. Now, I think the big thing about Twitter for me is the fact that you can do this around certain topics. I find on other platforms, often people are a lot more casual in conversation. Over on Twitter, people are really passionate about what they do and can get highly involved in what their topics are. But in many communities I've been in, they're a lot more respectful of other people's opinions because they're willing to acknowledge that someone else could have a differing opinion and see their research and evidence for it. And it really makes for some amazing conversations in certain communities. So it's not all bad in case you're worried that it can be a very angry place to be, like some people think it is. No, as long as you're being careful, like on all social media, and back up your opinions with facts, you'll be fine. Another big one is valuable new data or insights. If you've got an insight based on something that happened to you, or even data from your customers or from research you've done, people love hearing about new things in their industries because new topics are big on Twitter. As I said earlier with retweetable content, people love content that stands alone. What does that mean? It essentially means content that even if you stood it by itself and you've never read anything else related to it, it makes sense. Or at least you could see the entire picture through that tweet. So it's well worth making sure it can stand alone. And of course, if it taps into trends and news topics, don't have something that's completely out of date or unrelatable for your target audience. Think about how it can relate to the topics they care about, the pain points, as well as, where possible, trending topics and news. Humor. You can do humor on Twitter and many brands do an amazing job. So for instance, here you can see Old Spice has said in their poll, which bar is longer? And people are clicking just to see which one it is, and it was very closely called. Over on the left, you've got Weetabix, who did this amazing practical joke where they tweeted about having baked beans on Weetabix, which is the UK version of Weet-Bix, and it got so much engagement from other brand accounts as well as everyday people. So UK Rail and Parliament and all these other ones were getting involved and having their opinion on this. Moon Pie is a well-known one. The best I can describe Moon Pie's brand account as is if a 12-year-old boy was tweeting, but one who is good at social media. So yeah, they're really funny, a little bit off color sometimes, but people love engaging with them because they're funny and they've got things to say, and they engage in conversation with the people who talk to them and converse with them as well. But humor is definitely a big thing. So what types of tweets are there? Well, here are a few of them. Humor, as I showed you. Quotes are a big one. If you don't share a quote from a famous business person or someone in the industry, people love engaging with that because they're short, sharp pieces of content that they can share with their followers and retweet. Polls are a big one. So if you want to run a poll, you can have up to 4 options, and people love having their own opinion. And after they've selected an option, they'll often add their 2 cents in the conversation as well. So polls can work really well for engagement. Conversations, as I said before, and you, when starting a conversation, you don't have to have all the answers. You can ask a question. You can say, hey, something about ice cream. What flavor do you think is best? Or what flavor do you wish someone would invent? People love answering questions on Twitter. And of course, you can craft them around your particular niche and what's relevant to you and your business. questions are a big one. Yeah. People love sharing opinions, so ask them a question and let them share their opinion, like every social media platform. Videos can be quite a great way to engage. They are becoming more popular. However, it does depend on your niche. Twitter has always been very text-based, and so only certain demographics seem to work well with Twitter videos. So like everything, it's worth trying different things and see what works with your target market. And data. People love facts, figures, and data on Twitter. So share those with your community as well. So here are a quick overview of a few tweets that work. Over on the left, we've got looking at the data and simply laughing. It's humorous, it's simple, no punctuation or anything, but it really connects with people, probably in the scientific and research communities, who look at that, just go, that's funny, that's relatable. Now, bottom left, we've got, does it matter to you that the PM is married? Hashtag Auspol, which stands for Australian politics. At least one of our best ones wasn't. So this is a great conversation starter in the political area because it really gets people discussing their opinions and sharing their thoughts. And of course, people will be commenting on this based on specific happenings. So people who are informed in this topic, who know about the different prime ministers and how their relationships worked, well, they're going to have opinions and probably informed opinions as well. So it would be a great read, and it's also a great place to engage if that's your preferred topic. Now, at the top right, we've got also all 3 routes into the city now flooded shut. Unfortunately, I won't be able to present ABC News 7 p.m. tonight. Stay safe, everyone. This is from a journalist, and it was during the recent flooding. Now, as you can see, there's 444 retweets because this is really news, a piece of news explaining that the city is shut down and that you can't get into Sydney, which was flooded at the time. So people don't just want the news articles and media that's all created, especially around the news cycle. People want to hear from people on the ground, even if it's a journalist, because that's the data they want, and that's the data you can really get on Twitter. And bottom right, on the topic of Elon Musk, who recently bought Twitter. Imagine having enough money to end world hunger and buying a website instead. Well, that got great engagement because it was a trending topic, and because it was trending, everyone thought it was well worth sharing it with their own audiences and their own followers. So the next big question is, how often should you tweet? Tweets per day. 5 or more tweets per day leads to the greatest engagement and growth. And that's really scary, right? You go 5 tweets a day. I can't say that much. Well, you don't have to. Every demographic is different, and you can also not just tweet your own thoughts. You can go answer 5 other questions in your Twitter feed or make 5 comments. So it doesn't just have to be your own tweets that you're thinking up for yourself. You can go engage with other people, and you don't have to tweet that much if it's not your primary platform. It may be something where you go on once or twice a week. This is just an indication for those who are heavy Twitter users and really want to engage with their target demographic there. You've got to also keep in mind that the average Twitter user is only on the platform for around 15 minutes a day, which is much lower than most. The reason for this is that most people can log in, quickly scan their news feed, see all the major things happening, all the major talking points, and then go somewhere else because they've caught up on their news. So if they're only logging in once a day or twice a day in 5 or 10 minute lots, then it's likely they may not definitely see your tweet, although the algorithm will probably push it up if they engage with you a lot. So it's well worth keeping in mind that people consume Twitter in small bursts. And so tweeting around different times of day really increases the chance that people will see what you've got to say. So what about the time on Twitter? As I said, the average Twitter user spends around 15 to 20 minutes per day on the platform. but there is a cheeky little way that you can engage with them at different time zones without tweeting again and again, and I'll tell you about that a little later in the webinar. However, you do need to keep in mind that people aren't just hanging out on there all day. Well, some of us do, but most people don't. So the big question, how do you grow your following and your reach? As I said before, conversations are a big one. Because each tweet and each reply can stand on its own, you can actually get followers and engagement just by replying to someone else's tweet. So it's well worth engaging in those conversations whenever you get a chance in your demographic or target area. Another one, and this is really underutilized, I find, utilizing lists. So here's one that I made not long ago for Australian farmers, and it's just a list of different Australian farmers, and I've slowly been building it. I have 124 people on there at the moment, and as you can see, I've also got 76 followers for that list. Now, if I was an Australian farmer, I could add myself to that list, and anyone following along to find out about those people is going to see my tweet as well. So those 76 followers have a chance to see all of those 124 farmers tweeting. So building a list allows you to really narrow down news feeds based around whatever topic you want. So if you have multiple topics you follow, utilizing a list means you can see updates from each of them without having a newsfeed that's mixed up with all these different types of content. And the biggest one, and the thing that Twitter is kind of known for, is following people. Now, don't go out there and spam follow, but connect regularly, follow people who interest you or you want to see in your newsfeed. And the great thing about Twitter, many people will follow you back, but not all of them. So really start by building up your feed. Go follow interesting people in your niche. And if that's 500 people, not all at once, but slowly over a matter of days or weeks, build it up that way, and then you'll fill up your news feed with interesting new content, and you can engage in conversations with those people. So really look at how you can find the people who are active and follow along, see what they're saying, and build your news feed, because your news feed is key to engaging with the right demographic and the right community and really building up your brand. Now, Twitter is known for probably, well, most people follow hundreds or thousands of people because they want a busy news feed. So what that means is that if I log on to Twitter and I'm only following 100 people, and those 100 people only tweet once a day or once a week, I'm not going to have many interesting new updates. However, if I'm following 1,000 people or 5,000 people, I'm going to see a lot more little pieces of information in the areas I'm really interested in. So for me, I'm not sure. I think I follow maybe 25 or 30,000 people, and it sounds like a lot, but when you've been on Twitter, I think over a decade, you're really getting to have those conversations and see the same people regularly, and you see interesting topics retweeted and talked about from a whole wide array of opinions and perspectives. So it is worth following along with people who are having interesting conversations and are highly active on the platform. So, wrapping up, here's going to be a few fast, easy, fun things for you to work on, just so you know some other things you can utilize Twitter for. Some Twitter no-nos, first of all. So there are some things I recommend people don't do. For instance, over here on the right is BMW tweeting a poll. And in this poll, what they've actually done is assumed that people are going to vote for the super sustainable BMW as a way to have public transport. Instead, people voted for public transport as the major option. So that kind of didn't go the way they wanted. So if you're going to tweet or start a conversation, you need to ensure that you kind of know where the conversation is going to go. You're going to know your audience. You're going to know what kind of negativity you might get as well. So it's important to have an informed opinion and go into it knowing what you're getting yourself into, I guess. Some things to avoid include syndicating tweets from other platforms. You know how it is when you see someone's Instagram feed through to their Twitter, and then you see someone's Facebook feed through to their Twitter. All of these things, basically, they feel really spammy, and people do not want to click over to another social media platform. If they wanted to see a post on Facebook, they'd be on Facebook. So if you're not going to tweet like your own content, I'd recommend not syndicating content, because you're not going to get engagement that way, and it looks like someone who doesn't know anything about the platform just trying to have a news feed that no one's interested in. Don't use too many hashtags. What do I mean by that? Well, don't have half your tweet with all these different hashtags. Use one or two at the most. Use the best ones. You don't need to hashtag 30 different things like you might on Instagram. You can just use one or two major ones that are relevant to trends. Now, don't be tone deaf or not know your audience, as BMW obviously did over here on the right. Be aware of the conversations. This is why it's good to look at the news feed, be aware of what's going on, and then you won't accidentally put your foot in it when you tweet something. If you're tweeting something without being aware of what's going on, you can get yourself in trouble. Don't share too many links. Like all social media platforms, Twitter prefers people staying on theirs, and most people don't want to click away when they can find interesting content on Twitter itself. And don't only retweet other people. That's a big one. Simply because if someone follows you, they want to know what you've got to say. They're not following you to get a celebrity's opinion that you've reshared. They want to know what you've got to say. So don't spend all your time resharing other people's words. Create your own unique content and opinions and conversations as well. So, Twitter tips, here are some things that will help. And here's the biggest one: retweet your own tweets. Earlier, I did mention the fact that people only go on Twitter for short, sharp bursts to gather information from the newsfeed often. And that means they might miss your tweet. However, you can go on and retweet your own tweet and then untweet it and retweet it later. So say you tweeted in the morning, you could go on at lunchtime and retweet it, and then you could retweet it again in the evening. So you're going for multiple different time zones or people in different demographics who are online at different times. So that probably is one of my best tips. Every time I do this to my audience, I engage new people with a tweet where it might have only had low engagement if I didn't share it again. Don't engage if you can't take the heat. Use videos and GIFs as well as text. GIFs are a big one. They're a great way to get involved in conversation, and they can be quite funny. Now, another one is, as I said in the previous slide, don't retweet other people all the time. We want your opinions. But there is an option to retweet with a comment added to add your voice. So you can retweet something else in your industry, someone else's tweet from your industry, and then you add your own comment at the top, agreeing, disagreeing, adding your 2 cents. And that is worth doing because it shows you're engaging with your industry, but shows you've got your own voice, your own thoughts and opinions as well. So if you are going to retweet other people's content, add your own 2 cents, add your own opinion, please. So that is the end of tonight's Twitter webinar. If you do have any questions, feel free to stick around and I will answer them. Thank you to everyone who joined, and thank you, of course, to anyone who is watching along later. Hope you got something out of this webinar. If you do have any questions, well, I am on Twitter and you can hit me up there, and I am on most other social media platforms because I love social media. Can't help it. Anyway, I'm going to end the recording there, but thank you and have a great night.